We will work on the Pogo in a little bit, but I want to take a few notes today. My goal is to obviously get through a test this week. Yes. You didn't get the code. The code is on mRNA, right? It's called the code on. It's right here. It's on the bottom. They just put it on Pear Deck, right on the active screen, which is kind of nice because now you don't wonder. So, oh, that's loud. Tone that down a bit. So we've been talking about the Hardy-Weinberg, going through natural selection, things that affect it, mutations, gene flow, genetic drift. But looking at just natural selection, that driving force behind evolution, the adaptation of a population to the biotic and abiotic environment requires variation, inheritance, differential adaptiveness, and differential reproduction. The first one, variation, I think we understand. The members of a population differ from one another. There's variation in this room right now. Not one of us are the same. I don't see any identical twins in here, so we don't even have to worry about that discussion. And then inheritance. Many differences are heritable genetic differences, like Babola apparently, right? I know that was a joke, but that would have been a genetic difference. But I have brown eyes, some of you have blue eyes. That's inheritable. And then differential adaptiveness. Some differences affect survivability. So if it's an adaptation that helps make you different as a population, we say it's differential adaptiveness. And then there's differential reproduction, where some differences affect the likelihood of successful reproduction. If I'm a salmon that lays 2 million eggs instead of 1 million, I have a differential reproductive adaptation. Okay, if that makes sense. I watched a show on what was that? Coy wolves yesterday. The coyote wolves. Yes. That's disgusting. What are we talking about here? Well, it wouldn't go, and it's an honest question. So if I have two identical twins, yes, they have the same DNA. But here's the question I'm going to flip back at you. They would also be the same sex. But other than that, you know what I mean? So other than that, I know you didn't think that through too much, but that's double gross. Gosh, I'm recording. This is on YouTube. It's okay. I mean, it's a question that got asked. You can ask anything about it. That's what I found, yeah. So here's the thing. It wouldn't matter. Even if we were able to reproduce with males and females with females, it really wouldn't matter because I'm men. Let's say you live 80 years. Every day you make 4 million sperm. You'll never make the same one twice. And so the child is even going to be different. The big secret is you're not really half your mom and half your dad. You're half of parts of them, and it might not even be the parts that they express. So every time you make a new generation, you're not half related to your parents. You're more like an eighth in a way. And I can't get into that unless you take like genetics class, and we all will someday, I know, because you're all biologists. But just understanding that by the time you get to your great-great-grandfather, you're not really related anymore genetically. It's kind of weird to think about, but you've juggled your genes so many times that you can't even tell that you're genetically related, unless you look at the mitochondrial DNA, which comes from your mom. Okay. I know they got way too in-depth, way too quick, but I think you get the idea, right? Okay. Yeah, the obvious, they're the same sex is funny when you think about it. I didn't think about it until I thought about it. So the natural selection part, yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, they're going to be, yeah, I didn't want to. And then when I did, I was like, oh, that really isn't going to work. So a change in allele frequency of the gene pool results in natural selection, we understand that, and improved fitness of the population as well. Very rarely does natural selection make you less fit for your adaptation or your environment. And the major cause of microevolution is natural selection. How do we measure it? Allele frequency, right? Microevolution can be shown in allele frequency, which is what you guys are doing with the Hardy-Weinberg principle. Okay? If it changes from one year to the next, you can say microevolution is occurring. Can you show macroevolution from one generation of allele frequency change? No. So most traits are polygenic. Even eye color is polygenic. That means there's more than one gene involved. Now, variations in the trait result in a bell-shaped curve. We've talked about these and the different types of disruption that can occur. The three basic types, the first one is directional selection. That's where you get a shift in your whole bell curve. And if you remember this from biology either last year or the year before, that's where you eliminate one extreme, either, let's say, being really short and shifted slightly to being taller, or let's say you shifted and the top end became less predominant and you shifted to being shorter. But the whole bell curve would shift. So the curve will shift in one direction where bacteria become resistant to antibiotics. So you have more of these bacteria that are now resistant to antibiotics, and the normal type of bacteria that you could kill with antibiotics is no longer present. Okay? And so you get a shift away from those things we used to be able to fight off against. Also, increasing body size in horse evolution is one example that's directly from your textbook, where the horses tend to keep getting bigger. Humans were no exception to that. What's getting bigger for us? Our skull, right? Our brain. We're using it more, so we're shifting to a larger skull size. And then there's stabilizing selection. This is where things don't change very much. This is where the peak of the curve increases and tails decrease. An example is human babies with low or high birth weight are less likely to survive, so we get more of an average birth weight. Okay? If you're too little, you're malnutrition, and you die for various reasons, either underdeveloped organs or a lot of different reasons. If you're too big, you have problems during birthing, and unless there's a doctor there, you die. Okay? This happens a lot in cows, too. Not to compare humans to cows. We're both mammals, right? And then there's disruptive selection. This is where you no longer have an average and your bell curve splits in two. This is the very beginning of a new species, right? Okay. This is like different races of people where we were separated on big giant islands called continents for a long period of time. We started becoming very different, but then we came back together. So we kind of disrupted disruptive selection in a way. So the curve has two peaks, like the British land snails from your book, vary because a wide geographic range causes selection to vary. So I'm going to have you guys draw some graphs with me. I would like you to draw a graph, and I'm going to say the before graph is going to be a straight bell curve line. So just let me kind of give you an idea of what you'll draw there. So your initial line will all be straight, and then if I ask you to change the bell curve, I want the change you make to be a dotted line. Did you guys get that? Okay, that's fair. So I want you to show me directional selection. Directional selection. Directional selection. Directional selection. Give you about 5 more seconds to get that one in, then we'll see what we ended up with. Watch this one in real time. I like so far the ones I'm seeing are good. Oh, not that one. This one's not good. We'll talk about why in a minute. I like that one. That's good. So you see the normal bell curve, and then you see a whole shift in the bell curve. Still about the same size, but shifting from one type to the other. Very good. Oh, that one's not good. How'd you get? Those are some straight lines. But this is no good. That's no good. That takes a straight finger. Something. All right. So you get that idea. You got your regular bell curve, and then you get a shift. Something happens to shift. In this case, it looks like it went this way. Okay? And it can go right or left as long as you have a shift in the bell curve. Okay? Why don't you tell me or give me a stabilizing natural selection? Stabilizing natural selection. All right, let's see what we came up with. Well, you guys wrote some fun stuff. I gave you too much time, I know. Okay, stabilizing. Oh, very good. So you got your initial bell curve. Okay, and then you got the one. This is a little rough. I don't know about that one. You got something new on the top. That's not good. But I know it's tough drawing those lines. Science rules. Yes. Science rules, history drools. No. That's like picking on Joe. Hello. Someone last hour told me, what did they say? I see you. They kept writing it. It was like, it's creeping me out. IDK, that's an honest answer. Oh, there's a blank one. I'll use that. So, yeah, if you guys did, what you're supposed to, I should have seen that normal bell. Ooh, that's terrible. Normal bell curve. And then you would have seen where you get a lot more of the average, right? And you eliminate these two extremes. Why does that happen? Well, your environment remains very stable. This is what usually happens in environments that don't shift very much. And this is actually normally what happens. And it's also what allows speciation to occur. Because as things become more and more of themselves, they push farther and farther away from something else that's also doing the same thing, if that makes sense. So now think about our finches on the different islands. Hey, Mr. Nye, on those islands, we got those finches first separated by disruptive selection, and then the environment stayed the same for a long period of time. And those extremes became farther and farther away from each other. So the next thing I want you to show me, please, is a disruptive selection. Disruptive selection. You're not planning on being here next Friday, are you? We don't have school. I want you to show up and be like, shoot. Remember Hardy Weinberg? Probably didn't do that until college, right? No? You need a curved one, right? I don't. You got to have a straight finger. It's tough, I know. What? I need a Jeopardy theme? Oh, the song going in the background? Oh, shoot. Where's my keyboard? Oh, it's not. It's supposed to come up when I type there. Oh, well. There you go. I'll just have you do it for me. All right. So there we have our normal bell curve. All right, and then we have a disruption where you eliminate the average. And this is the very beginning of a more extreme evolution sequence of events or natural selection. This is the type of selection. I like that. Oh, all this stuff. I didn't read. Life equals 4. For life. For what? Carbon. Okay. Yes. Logan Reader. That works. Eliminating again. Anything that eliminates the average, and I get 2 peaks on both. Okay. I see. Yes. I see dead. I see dead people. What chicken? I don't see chicken. Oh, I didn't. Oh, okay. Vines grow in a vineyard. I know it's something else to young people, though. Very good. Okay. You guys get the idea. We're going to have a little fun. So, yes, the 3 types of basic natural selection where the peak increases, this would be stabilizing, okay? Where the peak shifts, that's going to be directional. And where you get a disruption in the middle, that is disruptive selection. So those are the three basic types of natural selection. I know a lot of you probably took that from biology, but very important understanding the different types of natural selection. So what does that mean to us? Well, here's the human birth weight stabilizing selection. This is your illustrative example from your textbook, where you start to see as things become more and more stable, you get more and more of an average birth rate. Okay, and sometimes it shifts. Okay, sometimes it shifts. The skull would be one thing that shifts, but in this case, you're seeing a slight. I can't read the bottom of my graph, which is really bugging me. It is. Well, it's because when I bring them in for my Google presentation, sometimes Pear Deck doesn't like them, so it's bugging me a little bit. I know.
We all have that rock one letter down.
Yeah, it's just a formatting issue is what it is, and I need to work it out because it's starting to bug me. But what you guys really need to take out of this is you get more and more of that average. This is a stabilizing selection situation. This is the horse example that was referenced in your notes, where as time goes on, horses have slowly but surely gotten bigger. Is this kind of normal for most mammals of the past since the K2 extinction? Yeah. So since that K2 extinction, mammals have slowly gotten bigger and bigger. Why? There's no dinosaurs. Right? It's like a no-brainer, just like a dinosaur, right? Oh, bird-brainer. Yeah. Same thing with our snail we talked about. Snail, we have two different varieties here. Those guys look pretty darn different. Okay. You know, this now is a disruptive selection situation, and eventually if we get disruption and then it stays stable, you get more of that average, two different stabilizing environments, and you end up with two different species eventually. Sometimes they're just subspecies, okay, and they can come back together and actually breed. Humans are a great example of that. For millions of years, we were separated on different continents. We created subspecies that historians call races. But if you ask a biologist, those are subspecies of a species. Just like different dogs can all reproduce, right? They're all subspecies of a dog, but still the same species. And then we came back together, and so now we no longer have that disruption, nor do we have that separate species really anymore, subspecies. Okay. I would imagine that humans are not going to stop migrating, so I would imagine eventually we're going to be one race again, which is kind of cool. Except for the Bobola ones. We don't want that to happen, right? Because that was a recessive, nasty trait, apparently. I hope you guys don't go home and tell your parents I taught you Ebola was genetic, because it's not. We were having fun. We were making up a little Hardy-Weinberg problem. So looking at sex selection, we talked about how that influences natural selection yesterday. Adaptive changes in males and females lead to an increased ability to secure a mate. Males have an increased ability to compete with other males for a mate, and females choose to select the male with the best fitness or the ability to produce surviving offspring. So here's kind of the weird thing. As men, we often think that we're the ones that make a lot of decisions, but the reality is, especially in primates, it's not the male that does the choosing. It is always the female. Male's job is to compete, and that's it, period. Females are to choose the best suited adaptation for that particular time or environment, which is kind of weird because we don't really think of it that way. But guys, we don't make a lot of decisions. We know that, right? You know, it's kind of like, yeah, we get it. Okay. What? It is sexist. But guess what? There are differences between sexes. So biologically speaking, it does influence, and I'm not just talking about humans. I'm talking about every animal on planet Earth. If you walk out in the woods and you look at a male deer, there's quite a difference between that one and the female. And the male is usually competing, and the female is usually choosing the one that wins. Now, someday it might not work that way, but as long as natural selection continues to work the way it is, that's what still happens today. Now, in humans, we compete a little different. We use our brains a lot more. So usually, it's the smarter individuals in the human race that get chosen. Sometimes, I guess I should say. We break all the rules. How about that? We just leave humans out of the whole entire equation. Yes. Conscious thought disrupts everything, right? That's disruptive in itself. Let's change the subject. How about that? We're going to move on. Female choice. Choice of a mate is a serious consideration because females produce few eggs. When I say few, I mean only like 300 or 400,000. But if you compare that to a male who produces 4 million sperm a day, big difference, right? Okay. So good genes, the hypothesis is where females choose mates on the basis of traits that improve the chance of survival. Sometimes that's true. Runaway hypothesis is where females choose mates on the basis of traits that improve male appearance. So these are the two conflicting hypotheses out there, and I can prove both of them correct with data. But they're the ones that we see in the Discovery Channel all the time, aren't they? Think about it. The first one, good genes, strong deer, wins the fight, female doe chooses him. And then I go to the birds of paradise, the best dancer, the one that grooms himself the best, the one that tidies the nest the best. He is the one that gets chosen in that environment. Two different hypotheses and two different ways to choose a mate. Both correct, though, and both influencing natural selection. And then there's the male competition, which we've referenced. Males can father many offspring because they continuously produce sperm in a great quantity and compete to inseminate as many females as possible. So right now, there's a good example of this going on. We have our deer, which we talked about, right? There is only one male in an entire herd that will inseminate all of the female does, usually, okay, the dominant deer. It's kind of weird when you think about it. So deer are not that biodiverse. And if a male is born, does he get to stick around in that herd? No, he gets pushed out. And that's a good thing too, right? Because you guys asked about inbreeding earlier. Okay? Think about salmon. Those are also running up the stream. Well, swimming up the stream, right? They call it a salmon run. I don't get it. But bad jokes. So the salmon come up the stream. Female drops off all of her eggs. She gets one shot, right? So a male, though, can basically drop spawn on multiple beds, so to speak, of all these different females. Have you ever seen the salmon and the browns do this? The males will actually slam into the female to knock eggs out of her, and then they'll spawn on them, and then they'll go find another female and they'll beat her up, and so it's terrible. I mean, it looks awful, but yeah, they're all bruised up. That's part of the reason why the fish, when they get up that far, they're all banged up and beat up. And, yeah. So you'll see these males, and it looks like they're all like protecting this female. Not so much. They're competing over her, and they're slamming into her to try to knock the eggs out of her so that they can spawn on them. So then there's dimorphism. That's an illustrative example for you, right? The drab females tend to choose flamboyant males as mates. This is that birds of paradise example we talked about. The more pretty boy or pretty male, I don't know what you call him, the prettier the boy, the more he is appealing to the female. This is not very many situations. This is the ones that have, I say, extra time on their hands, where they aren't really competing for food. They're usually in an area of plenty, like a rainforest, right? Okay, where there's no one's competing for food, so they have time to worry about competing for a mate. So if that makes sense to you. In Michigan, our animals don't have this luxury. That's why we don't have as pretty of organisms. Now our cardinals and our blue jays, some of them are like that, but that's more of a survival thing, so that predators don't see them. Not an attractive thing. Yeah, exactly. Like you have if there's like a pile of cheeseburgers in front of you, you have time to worry about looking in the mirror. If you have no cheeseburgers, you're looking for your cheeseburger, right? Unless you're a vegetarian, then you're. So we've talked about sex selection and competition. This is one we're real familiar with in Michigan just because of our deer population. Now, a study of sexual selection among humans shows that female choice and male competition applies to humans too. So we are no exception to this. I took a class in college that was called, well, I don't know if I should tell you what it's called. It's called Human Sexuality. It's an anatomy class. And it basically looked at humans and how this has influenced our evolution. So women must invest more in having a child than men, like 9 months, and then till they're like 25 and leave the house, right? And men need only, you still living at home, Lexi? See? No? Good, you got out. So how old are you now? When did you move out? 7 months, so 20 years. Oh my goodness. So I've got, my daughters are going to be at home for another 10 years. I can deal with that. I hope they never leave. Is that weird?
Yeah, that was
Yeah. Say, I won't. Yeah, I won't say that in 10 years. Probably not. You're right. So they might. Imagine having to listen to my jokes all day and all night. That would be Men need only contribute sperm, right? Men have one job. Essentially, drop off half the genetic information and you're done. Now, we know that's not the case in the human population, but in reality, it is in a lot of cases. Okay? So generally, more available for mating than are women. So men can go around and reproducing more. We understand that. Females are more vested in that situation. So more available men result in competition, and men also have a choice. They prefer women who are most likely to present them with children. Now, I won't get into the details on that one, but there's a whole plethora of examples that we could talk about. Yep. Men choose women who are more apt to reproduce, which means they don't go after the one that looks like they're starving to death or looks like they're about to die, right? That kind of thing. If you were to look at, let's look at a gorilla population, because they're primates too, okay? Let's take our silliness with magazines and all that crap out of the situation, okay? Because we have a really warped view of that, okay? But if you look at gorillas, they choose the huskier, more strong, dominant female. You look at wolves, same thing, right? Okay? And I'm not saying we're wolves, the men. They would not choose, they would choose the dominant female, the man would. They would not choose the scrawny one that looks like, oh, that one might not be able to have a child and send my DNA on for future generations. Now, they don't think that, but instinctively, that's exactly what's going on. Okay. What? Henry VIII, yes. Henry VIII he was. All right, I'm stopping there and thank God because I think I've had enough of that conversation for one.